Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Hey guys, we're your hosts, Em and Jay, and today the two of us are talking about the Wonder Twins. Recently there was a new Wonder Twins comic, and honestly, it's really bad. The Wonder Twins have suffered enough. I really don't think they needed this. The thing about the Wonder Twins is they didn't start out in comics, they came from the Super Friends series, a cartoon series from the 1970s that was known to be pretty campy. And while it was pretty fun, it's very dated, not a lot of it aged well. Comics have had their campy eras, like the Silver Age. That didn't mean it was bad, but a lot of people do mistake campiness for just being bad, or a joke, which is unfortunate. Not everyone has to like camp, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have any merit. The 1960s live-action Batman was pretty campy. For a lot of people, Batman was a campy character to them, and they didn't see him as anything else. But Batman did have a history in comics of being pretty serious, so there were people who were able to see Batman as more than that, and because of their creativity, we were able to get really great Batman stories that didn't have to be campy, and they helped Batman to not be dismissed. But the Wonder Twins came from camp, and that's how a lot of people view them. So a lot of the times, these characters are viewed as joke characters, and that's unfortunate because there's actually a lot of potential here. They can be fun characters, but they don't have to just be jokes. While the Wonder Twins have made cameo appearances in other properties, this is the first Wonder Twin-led book in quite a while, so it's a real shame that it's so cringy and creepy. In this comic, the Wonder Twins don't get to fight any bad guys or do anything super heroic. The only time they use their powers is to race to school. It's like they forgot this was a superhero story. At this point, why have a superhero comic? You might as well just have a high school story about twins. This comic gives them a new backstory. Their backstories have been changed a few times in the past, but this one is definitely the worst. It takes very little from the previous incarnations, other than them being from a planet called Exor. In this version, Superman knows their father, which at least we know they have a father, because in other versions of their backstory they were orphans because they lost their parents in a plague. But here something happened, which they don't go into details about, but he says that the kids can't stay on Exor anymore because they'll be outcasts. Probably something that he did. This will probably be explained in a future issue, but we don't have very high hopes for what it probably is. It'll most likely be something that's not even that big a deal, based on how the rest of this comic goes. But Superman tells their father that he'll take them to Earth and he'll set them up. He'll put them in school and he'll even put them on the Justice League. He doesn't tell any of the other Leaguers about this until after he's already made these arrangements, which seems pretty lax for the Justice League. But Diana and Bruce are asking questions about their new teammates, and Clark goes on to explain that they're changelings who have the ability to turn into animals and water. Diana makes a point to let everyone know how underwhelmed she is at Zan's abilities, which wouldn't be the first time people have criticized his powers, though I think it's strange that Superman seems to be downplaying Jayna's abilities too, saying that she can only turn into animals, as if that's an underwhelming ability to have. He's acting like she's the girl from Sky High who could only turn into a guinea pig. No one ever makes fun of Beast Boy's powers. I really don't care for how the Justice League is portrayed in this comic. They're very shallow, and really the Justice League would be more mature than this. This joke is very unoriginal, and we've seen it before. Even Teen Titans Go made this joke, where people don't see the value in Zan's abilities. He can turn into any form of water, whether it's ice, or gas, or fog, or liquid. There were other characters who have this ability too, including Juvia from Fairy Tail. So this is hardly out of the box, and it's not as ridiculous as people like to make it out to be. I've always wondered why it is that Jayna can turn into animals, and Zan turns into water, since those things aren't really all that related. I think it'd be cool if he turned into any kind of element, like fire, electricity, rock, things like that. Then it would be like she transforms into organic beings, while he transforms into inorganic substances. But that's just my opinion. There's nothing actually wrong with him just turning into different forms of water. But if people really can't get past this, then they might as well just update it. Cause these jokes are so old. We don't need to do this anymore. We've been able to see characters like Aquaman be able to break out of their perceived uselessness uselessness. Again, thanks to the work of creative people. For a long time, there were a lot of people who thought that Aquaman was useless and all he did was talk to fish.
My ability to talk with fish is of no help, Wonder Woman.
He's so much more than that. We think the Wonder Twins deserve the same treatment. We were expecting them to team up with the Justice League, but instead they get stuck going to school. Today is Ancestry Day, so Zan tells his classmates about Exor, but he doesn't really seem to know much about what really goes on there. He claims that it's some kind of paradise that's managed to fix all of its social issues, and is some kind of utopia. The writer also throws in this jab at Sweden, which seemed unnecessary, saying that their food is bland. What does he have against Swedish meatballs? Clearly he's never been to an IKEA. It seems like they don't even know that they were forced to leave. It's nice that Exor hasn't had that plague yet. But the only other thing that this comic adds to the lore is that the adults of their home planet go crazy when there's a thunderstorm. They get taken over by something that's referred to as thunderlust, and they just go at each other. Everything on the planet has to stop for this. Imagine being a child on this planet and having to watch your parents and your neighbors and your teachers. Did they think this through at all? This has never been a part of the twins' backstory before. And it honestly raises a lot of questions and concerns. Mostly concerns. This thunderlust thing seems like a really bad idea, but we'll talk about it later because it comes up again in the story. The twins themselves come off as really generic. Zan wants to be popular, but given his track record, that's probably not going to happen considering the fact that he already freaked out his class with that whole thunderlust thing. But he has this pretty crazy scheme to get popular, where he plans on joining the hockey team, not as a player, but as the ice they skate on. Meanwhile, we're constantly being told that Jayna is the shy one, but she isn't actually portrayed that way in the book. She says that she's frustrated that they keep throwing new things at her without giving her a chance to get settled in, but she does fine reading the announcements. She's shown talking to new people without any awkwardness, and we never see her struggle with anything the same way Zan struggles with things. We're just told she does. So it comes off as weird that they would constantly tell us that she has this problem without actually showing it. After school, the two head to the Hall of Justice, where they're shown around, and they explain how everything works. Hawkman calls Superman and tells them that they found a body. Zan doesn't read the room very well, and he says congratulations, which leads to another awkward moment. Maybe they should have considered giving that line to Jayna, considering the fact that she was already complaining about how awkward she was, and how she didn't have a handle on things. She could have told Zan, see, I have no idea what the right thing to say is. It would have made her a little more sympathetic, because right now all she's really been doing is complaining. But Superman figures out that it's Mr. Mxyzptlk, that guy from the fifth dimension that we can only hear as Gilbert Gottfried, who's causing trouble again. So Superman and Hawkman just fly off and leave the kids there. Jayna complains again, but Zan's more interested in figuring out how to become popular. Jayna tries to talk to the supercomputer, but finds out that they can't really do anything to help. So the twins just end up getting benched in their own comic book. Mr. Mxyzptlk gets away, and the kids don't get to do anything. They just go back to school the next day, and there's a warning that he's still out there and he's causing havoc on the weather. They decide to race to school, which is the only time in this comic that we get to see them use their powers. I know the writer thinks that their powers are a joke, and maybe he didn't really want to make this comic, maybe DC just gave it to him, but it would be really nice if we got to see them actually use their powers for something that mattered. But at school, Jim ends up being held outside, which is really strange because they know that the weather is all messed up. It was on the weather report earlier that day. When we were in high school, we stayed indoors when we knew there were going to be storms, but they wouldn't be able to have this joke if they thought these things through. The thunderstorm ends up triggering discovering Zan's thunderlust for the first time, and he grabs on to the gym teacher, trying to explain what's happening to him, since everyone around him is concerned. He blurts out that he's experiencing thunderlust, and he ends up becoming the laughingstock of the school because of it. The next page cuts to after school, where Zan tries to distance himself from Jayna in an attempt to protect her from embarrassing herself by associating with him as everybody else mocks him. Honestly, the implications of this are really concerning. Like, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen, or worse. The comic doesn't go into detail about what happened on the track field, but the way that Zan described thunderlust in his presentation made it sound really extreme. Imagine if he had grabbed a female student, or if he had assaulted the gym teacher. The two of them would have to leave school. They might have to leave Earth like they had to leave Exor. Or since people know about the thunderlust, they could take advantage of the twins by inviting them out when they know there's going to be a thunderstorm. Wow, this review got really dark. I'm sure they won't take it in that direction. Here it was just shown that he grabbed his gym teacher, and it's just portrayed as being funny and hilarious and not creepy at all. But that's because they don't think these jokes through. The Wonder Twins are viewed as joke characters, so not only are they going to make fun of their powers, they also have to give them some outlandish problem with their own physiology, where they can't control themselves during a thunderstorm. Cause I guess the writer thought there wasn't enough to laugh at. But Jayna ends up going to the Justice League and telling them all about Zan's embarrassing moment at school. Even though she's supposed to be shy, she really has no problem talking to people, even about things that are awkward. But she says it's a special time in his life. Zan isn't happy that everyone knows now, but Batman and Superman try to cheer him up by sharing embarrassing stories from when they were in high school, like Batman getting caught writing a love letter to another classmate, and Superman failing to impress girls. But these really aren't on the same level. They don't lose control of their bodies when there's a thunderstorm like Zan does. This thunderlust thing can happen again, and since they established in the first issue, it probably will happen again. And eventually, it's gonna happen to Jayna too. There's a lot that could go wrong here, and it's really worrying that the writer just doesn't seem to get that. But the comic ends with Mr. Mixius Pitalik showing up again to cause more havoc. But Jayna gets the supercomputer to play his name backwards, which works, whether it should or not, and she says she feels like she's starting to get the hang of this place. I don't mind that DC is trying to have a comedic book with the Wonder Twins. I think that can work. Our biggest problem is that the writers are laughing at the Wonder Twins instead of with the Wonder Twins. It reminds me of when people would laugh at Aquaman and say he's just a weirdo who talks to fish and he's useless. But imagine if some writer had given him that thunderlust problem, where all of Atlantis goes crazy if they happen to be around a thunderstorm. This is past awkward, but DC hasn't figured that out yet. DC isn't really shown to have any respect for these characters. They gave Zan this really basic high school want, and the only issue Jayna really had was feeling out of place and like she didn't have the hang of being on Earth. But then by the end of the comic, she feels more confident, so that was her whole character arc. Now there's not really much left for her other than to get Thunderlust herself. The Wonder Twins have had an interesting and varied history. Sometimes they're really campy, and sometimes their stories are really dark, like most of their planet getting wiped out by a plague, or them being enslaved. But this was just really awkward and inappropriate, especially given the current climate, where jokes like these get a lot of flack, and even ones that are much more innocent than this. I guess DC decided to go for it, but I don't know if this particular joke worked out the way that they wanted it to. I also think that this joke was not what the Wonder Twins needed. They really needed DC to be in their corner. They could have had another Aquaman on their hands, but instead they took these campy characters and made them really creepy. Like how Aquaman had a really great outing with this movie. It was fun without making fun of the main character. Maybe someday, Wonder Twins, but that day is not today. But that's just our opinion. What do you guys think? Did this comic work for you? I know this sounds ridiculous, but it's really sad that we have He-Man being removed from She-Ra's entire mythos, and then they did this to the Wonder Twins. It would be nice to see twin characters get a little more love, but that's more of a personal gripe. Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you liked this video, you can give it a like and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more content like this. And we'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone. Bye guys.